So I'm just going to do share my screen here. And we have a lot of guest speakers for you today. So welcome to the second workshop. Today's agenda, we have 5 things we want to go through. The first thing is we have a surprise for everyone, and that is 2 special guests who want to say hello. I just asked them to drop in and say hello. So we'll get to that in a bit. The other things that we want to cover today are following from the last workshop, the gross floor area and livable area calculation. So we want to talk to you a little bit about how to do that. My colleague, Frank, is going to talk about construction planning at a very high level. I understand that you're still at the design stage at this point, but we want to give you a little bit of information and to consider when you plan your construction. Okay, and then finally, we want to discuss just touching on if any of you are considering new innovative materials, the approvals process for that. So in today's presentation, as I said, we have 2 special speakers today. Stefan Jones, who's the Vice President of Innovation at CMHC, and his colleague, Jonathan Laflamme. This is the first time that I'm meeting Stefan. He and I have never talked, but I know Jonathan and I have been chatting back and forth. In addition to that, later around 9:20, we're going to have Alison Calistano, who's the principal of Calistano Consulting, and she was also formerly part of the Altus Group, doing cost estimations in Ontario and in Canada. And then in addition to that, you know all of us because we've met some of you. You know my colleague Frank, our CEO Anthony, Emily, as well as Lisa. So without further ado, one more item. Just a housekeeping item is check-in number 2 is now available for scheduling. So that's happening from April 12th to the 23rd, 1-hour sessions. Please follow this link, and Lisa should have sent it to you by email already. So we're going to meet with you again, 1-on-1-hour sessions, talk about your project. It's a progress check-in, see how you're doing and if you need any feedback. This week, we're also posting more of the Building 101 videos. So videos 6 through 10 will be posted on these topics. So when you get a chance, just peek through again. They're very short, a few minutes, but just to give you some guidance on the context of what we're talking about and using the same language. And so I'm going to turn it over to Stefan and Jonathan to say hello. And just to give you some background on who they are, CMHC is responsible for, I guess, all of Canada's housing strategy. And Stefan and Jonathan are from their innovation division. And they have ambitions to shake up Canada's housing system to make housing more affordable for all. And in 2018, Stefan was instrumental in helping CMHC set up a new strategy and course for the future, anchored by an ambitious goal that by 2030, everyone in Canada has a home that they can afford and that meets their needs. Encouraging innovation is a key part of the strategy. So they just came in today to say a few messages to you, and with that, I'll hand it over to them.
Thank you so much, and really, really appreciative for being able to join you today, and super thrilled to meet the 20 teams who have been selected to advance to stage 2 of the Marco Polo 100 Digital Build Challenge. As we all know, housing affordability is a global problem. And here in Canada, it's front and center in the national conversation. And frankly, it's pretty impressive to see what Horizon Legacy is doing to launch a challenge to build more affordable housing using new construction technologies and processes. When we learned about this a few months ago, Jonathan brought it to my attention. Again, we were just thrilled to see this kind of activity or action happening, sort of in the private market, and again, thrilled to be here today. We strongly support this type of innovation. We've just started, I would say, in the last 6 months, dabbling in sort of the construction innovation space ourselves. We have ambitions or hopes to actually build or bring the first 3D printed development as a demonstration project to fruition in Canada later this year. So we're working hard on that. And again, it's just, we view these kinds of opportunities as just significant learning opportunities, and just for us to get closer to the industry and just learn ourselves. So again, thank you for having us today. We'll be watching very closely as the challenge unfolds, because we are just so interested in what's happening. Canada is an extremely large country in terms of space. Second largest country in the world, but a relatively small population, 37 million. And so it kind of, when you've got that much space and a relatively small population, it sort of raises question marks around why we have housing affordability challenges. But we do have a diverse population, a fairly harsh climate that ranges from extreme heat in the summer to extreme cold in the winter. Very remote areas of the country, for example, the north, that presents its own sort of construction challenges, supply chain issues, etc. So there's a high degree of variability in sort of housing needs and interests. And to meet those needs, the way we're structured here in Canada is we have 3 levels of government. There's the federal government, which of course has sort of purview over the whole country. We have 10 provinces and 3 territories, and over 3,500 municipalities in this country, cities. And each level is responsible for specific issues. We at CMHC, or the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, we sit at the federal level. And so we're responsible to provide national housing leadership in Canada. We are the National Housing Agency in Canada, but we work closely with our partners in the provinces and municipalities who are responsible for actually delivering housing in this country. So the three levels of government has its pros and cons. It does have advantages, but it also it can create challenges when it comes to delivering housing, and who's accountable for what, and where does responsibility lie, and how are programs crafted and delivered. It does create some complexities, but it is the structure we have here in Canada. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation specifically, we've been around for about 70 years, so we're a fairly well-entrenched federal agency. We are what's called a Crown Corporation. So we are not a pure federal department, but we're also not in the private sector. We sort of straddle the space between the two, which actually puts us in a unique position to not only deliver government programs, but also to work more closely with the private sector and get involved, frankly, with things like this, which federal departments might not normally do. So it's a really interesting space to be in. Our entire company is anchored around this goal that you heard a few minutes ago, that by 2030, everyone in Canada has a home that they can afford and that meets their needs. And, when I think about the pandemic, what's happened in the last year, we actually thought, while that's been very difficult for all of us, and particularly vulnerable populations, we thought it was the silver lining in that it was actually going to help us with respect to housing affordability. But I think, frankly, what we've seen here in this country, at least, is the housing market is, frankly, is as ridiculous as ever. The prices just keep going up. There's very little supply, strong demand, and we've seen extreme price increases. Here in Ottawa, I live in Ottawa, Canada, and here in Ottawa, houses are going for $200,000-$300,000 over asking, and it's just. Frankly, it's unsustainable, and we have to find other ways to bring down the cost of housing, which is why challenges like this are so important. So while housing is crucial, just providing access alone isn't sort of a silver bullet or the one-size-fits-all approach, and we need multiple strategies, from policy to technology to construction advancements to things like zoning and development advancements. All those things combined are going to help make housing more affordable in this country, and hopefully we can create examples and set the stage for others around the world. So working together in a collective way is important. Again, I think seeing these kinds of endeavors pop up and happen, I think, is just really interesting to see, and we're super pleased to be part of it. So thank you so much for having us. Like I said earlier, we will be watching extremely closely as this process unfolds. Anything we can do to provide support, help, whatever that might happen to be, we're happy to get involved and lend as much support and assistance as we can to make this program or project as successful as possible. So thank you again for having us, and I'm now going to turn it over to Jonathan, my colleague, who's going to speak a little bit more.
Thanks, Steph. So Steph quickly touched on the pandemic and its impact. And for us, what it has done is it did confirm the importance of housing in Canada. And we talked a lot about COVID these days, but what I would also like to highlight is that it hasn't only been the only disruption this year. We have seen as a company and as a country a growing, and even across the world, a growing movement against systemic racism towards people who are Black, Indigenous, and from other racialized communities. And I just felt important to acknowledge that because it is certainly top of mind for us and me personally. What I thought I would do is just quickly talk about some of the things we do. It's by no means exhaustive, but at least it will give you an idea. And so a key piece that we are responsible for at CMHC is the National Housing Strategy. It is the largest and most ambitious federal housing program in Canadian history. And so over the next decade, we're looking at investment of over $70 billion to address housing needs across the continuum. So here you see the continuum that we often refer to. So it goes from homelessness to supportive housing to market housing. And as part of the National Housing Strategy, there's a focus on four key areas. And you see them over here at the top. So the creation of new housing supply, the renewal or renovation of existing affordable housing stock. Finally, providing additional resources for community housing providers, and and innovation and providing research as well, research support. And so without going into a lot of details, I just thought that I would highlight a couple of the innovation programs that we have here at CMHC. We have things from demonstration initiatives to showcase the innovative solutions to housing challenges, to an online platform where experts on community on housing can meet to share knowledge and discuss specific issues, to finally, as well, a housing supply challenge to remove some of the barriers associated to the creation of the new of supply. And so I guess the last thing that we would want to leave all the teams with is that and Steph mentioned that earlier, is that we know that innovative thinking will be required to solve the affordability challenge. And we thank you for taking part into this challenge. It's very important for Canada, but also for the world in general. We know that as innovators, as creative individuals, there are difficult moments through the innovation journey. And we encourage you not to fear them, but to embrace them, because often the best comes from them. And you probably know this already, but never stop questioning or learning. It's impossible to solve problems with the same thinking that we've always used. And so new, fresh thinking is required. And finally, we're pretty excited about this competition, and we'll maintain active, we'll continue working with the challenge organizers to learn from it and see if there's a way to disseminate the knowledge gained from this challenge across the housing sector and perhaps identify additional opportunities further down the road. So thank you.
Wow, thank
I
you
know.
so much, Jonathan.
Yeah. So sorry, I know you had us identified as surprise guests, so hopefully that wasn't too disappointing. But we're like we both said, we're thrilled to be part of this, and we want to help out and support in whatever way we can. So thank you so much.
Well, yeah, no, thank you, Stefan and Jonathan. I have been in the challenger shoes. I have been a contestant in other competitions before, so I understand how they feel, and especially the message that, you know, they might encounter difficulties, but that's part of the joy and the process of learning and improving and doing something new and taking those risks. That is the spirit of this competition and what we've created. And I just hope that they will continue in their journey and to not be deterred, because, you know, sometimes we have to remember the why of why we do things. And, you know, the context that you've sketched out is that Canada really needs affordable housing, really needs innovation like this, and that people like yourselves are here to help and support, just like our competition teams. So that means a lot to us. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to take questions at the end, like last time. So we're just going to go through some meat and potatoes things about the competition now. So I'm going to introduce it over to Tony, who's going to talk about some calculations. So do you want to go ahead, Tony, and then just cue me if you want me to go to the next slide? Oh, you're on mute.
Let me unmute. Well, good morning, and Stefan and Jonathan, welcome, and thank you for joining us. This is exciting for us. You know, while the contestants certainly have a journey, and while Young has been a participant in a contest or a challenge, I can tell you, I've never been involved in something like this. So in mounting this and trying to keep it moving forward is a brand new journey for us. And from day to day, there's no end of thrills, of excitement and tough days. And so we're glad to see that, you know, there's other people who are supporting what we're all trying to do. So welcome to everyone, and to the contestants. We really appreciate you making this submission, and congratulations to the 20 of you who have made it through to this next stage. We realize that you know, we've put out a lot of information, and some of it may have not been consistent. So I want to clarify just some important concepts. So the first one is, and can everyone see this screen, Young? Or,
Yeah.
yeah. So is this term gross floor area. So gross floor area is basically you measure from the outside surface of the outside walls and then across to the other outside surface. And you don't make deductions for anything in between. And so this pretty much gives people the scale of what's being contemplated. It gives the contractor, you know, you could appreciate how much material he needs. And so this is a very basic measurement, and you can see the definition here. Young, let's move to the next one. Now we have another measurement called livable area, which, if you can see the dotted red line inside the apartment here, what this measurement is measured from the inside face of the walls of the apartment. And this is, as the term says, to tell us how much livable space an occupant would have, you know, for somebody who's thinking of renting it. Also, for us who are going to go out and rent out these apartments, So we have a very clear understanding of what it is we're going to market. And so this is another measurement we need you to do in your submission. And you can see the definition in the text. Let's go to that next sheet, Young. This is the costing template we distributed, and you can see we asked for the calculations on the gross floor area and then in the livable area, and both of those go to help us understand what a project would cost and what the efficiency of the project is. And when I say efficiency, one of the ratios that's important is the ratio between the gross floor area and the livable area, because the livable area in the end is what the client or the occupant actually has and sees and lives in. And so it's how much gross floor do you need to build to produce a given amount of livable area. Okay, Young, let's go to the next. So we also want to clarify unit sizes. We're starting to see in our one-to-ones some different unit sizes and some that were very much smaller than what we're showing here. And it's our judgment for these units to be marketable that the bachelors should be a minimum, as you see, of 30 square meters, the one bedroom, 50 square meters, and the two bedroom, 64.5 square meters. And we want these to be the minimum sizes in both the large and the small buildings. Okay, yeah. And so we've amended our Appendix A here. And you can see in the large building, we were frankly putting in too many independent variables. So what we want to clarify is the building will have a maximum gross floor area of 10,000 square meters. The units, the livable areas of the units will be as I described, and you can see repeated here. And then what we're asking you to do is to place as many units as you can in the building using these constraints with the ratios we've described of 50% one bedroom, 30% studio, and 20% two bedrooms. And in the large building, you will see in the codes, in this 12-story building, but we just put some of the things down here to make sure nobody forgets them. The building will need an elevator or elevators, depending on your design decision, lobby and entranceway, a mail room, a firefighter's room. Young, let's continue. In the small building, what we want you to do is design 3 units, one of each type, the bachelor, the one bedroom, and two bedroom, with the minimum sizes, with the minimum livable sizes we talked about. And then try and be as efficient as you can in terms of overall built area or overall cost to produce the 3 apartments on the 2 floors. Young, I can't remember if there's anything else. No, that's it for my part. And again, thank you for being part of this.
Okay, so I'm going to invite Frank to talk a little bit about, again, this is maybe half a year in advance, but just to help you with your thinking process and how this gets laid out and executed. I'm going to ask my colleague Frank to talk a little bit about construction planning and how what you should expect.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. It's nice to see everybody again. The context for my discussion is to really help give some guidance with respect to the deliverables that we've asked for in this stage that we're in, and project a little bit into what it might look like when we're actually in construction. So let's establish some roles and expectations for start. And what that means is that you're a key team member, and we need you to establish a scope of how much or how little are you willing to do during the construction phase. Some of you are far away. Some of you want to provide ideas. Some of you want to actually provide equipment and technology. So you need to articulate that to us. What is the scope? And internally, I think it's important that you define the roles and responsibilities amongst yourselves. And the reason why I mention that is we'll need to identify a project lead at some point. You will, and that project lead will be your face, okay, in dealing with questions and activities and everything else that's going to come up on the site. That person needs to be available to attend meetings, respond to requests for information, and so on. Communication is key, obviously. Nothing cripples a construction site more than silence. The contractors building this thing will have questions, and we need to be able to communicate with them quickly. So that takes me a little bit to just technology compatibility, and I really don't know what that means 100%. But we all need to be able to communicate. So if you're running a certain platform, we need to make sure that platform is able to communicate with the other team members. Okay, some of you, I understand, are designing in Grasshopper. I've also heard some other platforms. We're going to have to be all on the same page when it comes to that. So we'll come back to you on that. I know our architect is thinking about that a little bit. But it'll be important for us to be all on the same platform. When it comes to budgets, what we need to do here is vet your budget. We need your help in vetting the budget, and everybody has a target, and you're going to propose that I can build it for X, and we want to help. We want to help you succeed. So we need as much information as possible to help vet the costs. So use the template provided. If there's any questions, please ask concerning the template. But it's important to identify quantities wherever possible, because that's how we're going to weigh things a little bit. Literally, we want to know that how many taps you're putting in, how many counters, how many cubic meters of concrete or goo that comes out of your printer. Our quantity surveyor and ourselves are going to use that data to help determine if the costs appear to be reasonable and achievable. So please provide as much information as possible. Do not include earthworks and foundation costs in your costing. As you know, we will be taking care of that. The idea is to give you a blank slate to work from, a pad on grade, for example, and your costs are to include everything from that pad up. Okay. Schedules. we would like you to establish, you have to provide a schedule as part of the submission for the stage 2. And the schedule should contain some milestones. So think about when you expect to hit certain milestones. Have regard for restrictions. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing 3D printing, for example, are there restrictions on when the machine can't operate? Are there restrictions because of environmental conditions? The machine can only operate when the temperatures are above, X or Y. So have regard for that sort of thing. Provide as much detail timelines as possible in the project schedule, and I'm going to say make them achievable. And I guess what I mean by that is, think about if things go wrong. What could go wrong? How much time will it take to fix? Allow for transportation to the site. Allow for the logistics, which we'll get into in this discussion. But put as much detail as you can into the project schedule. Procurement, does the supply chain already exist? Is it established? Some of you have raised, because you don't know, Southwestern Ontario or Southern Ontario, and I've heard questions of, are there people that are companies that supply windows and doors or roofing materials? And the answer to that is, yeah. There's a fairly mature construction industry here, and we're building high rises. Condominiums are going up in Toronto at a record pace. So there's good supply chains, but some of you may require specialty items or equipment or mixes would be useful here, to identify lay down areas near adjacent to the site, for example. Do I need to improve the site? Do I need to build a crane pad, for example, or have a lay down area? Am I building a small manufacturing facility next to the site? How much space does that need? Try to identify all these things so that we make sure we have enough space to support your activities, or find another way of mitigating space crunches. Okay? So that takes me to quality control. The idea behind quality control is to try and catch defects to avoid rework later. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, you develop specifications, for products and for materials and for assembly. Think about how things fit together, and what sort of testing will be needed. What sort of inspections will be needed, and we'll get into that in the next talk. But what inspections will be needed? What needs to be calibrated? For example, 3D printing. Critical that if the machine gets moved, it be recalibrated. We don't want a crooked building at the end of the day or a crooked wall. So what are the steps that are taken to ensure that the unit is performing as intended? It's placing the goo, for example, in the right location. You need to identify what sort of testing of the materials coming out of the printer are necessary, for example. Identify, when it comes to backtracking a little bit, when it comes to quality control and developing those specifications, you might find that to ensure quality, for example, if you're casting a traditional building using cast-in-place concrete, there's cure times between slab works, for example, right? In traditional concrete, that could be 21 days, 28 days, 30 days. It depends. So with new technologies and new materials, you need to tell us for quality purposes what the restrictions are, what activities can and can't take place on a freshly poured floor using new materials, because these have impacts on schedules. If I can't start another activity until this cures, you need to bake that into your construction schedule. So think about that. Quality control and inspections kind of go hand in hand. So, inspections really refer to, critical manufacturing processes and steps that need to be inspected, at the factory, during the manufacturing process, prior to shipment to the site, at arrival at site. Think about these types of inspections, and on-site inspections as well. Do you test the material, again, coming out of that 3D printer nozzle? How often do you test it to make sure it's the right mix as intended? You need to show these inspections on the schedule. We want to know that you thought about these things, please, and again, just show them on the schedule when you see these inspections taking place. That takes me last.
The message is, even though these are things that we'll think about in later stages, possibly stage 3, when you are planning your project and the things that you're thinking about, try as much as possible to accommodate and consider some of these aspects in your plan, in your schedule, in your budget. The more complete it is, the better it is for us to ascertain whether we can, whether these are valid and whether your plan is executable. And really here is draw us a picture. If you have any special requirements, some of you are considering doing on-site assembly or off-site assembly, specify what you need. Draw us a picture. Here's my laydown area. Here's my staging. Here's my crane. Here's the width, the dimensions. Here's the swing area, so that we can prepare the site for you. If you have any special road requirements, etc., think about that and tell us in advance. So finally, today's workshop, the topic is approval process for new materials. And again, this is a very high level topic, so just want to make you aware of it. So for any of you that's considering new materials or any new construction product, there is a requirement that when we go to apply for a building permit, the building permit reviewer, if there's a new material, for instance, if somebody's needing a new mix for a 3D printer, or if somebody wants to use a new lightweight material in your prefab building, when you go to apply for a building permit, the building permit reviewer will ask, okay, is this material approved to be used in Canada? And the organization that runs this is called CCMC, and they operate as part of National Research Council of Canada. And they have an online database. This is a link to their database products, construction products and materials that have been approved. And they also issue Canadian standards and equivalency. So if this is a new material that is being introduced, the easiest way, or one of the most common ways, is to have the architect or engineer evaluate this new material. And if in their opinion it meets existing standards, they can write a letter, submit it to the building permit official, and say, in their opinion, this new material is equivalent to an existing Canadian standard or product. If it's not, or if there's certain research areas that need to be explored, then there's a separate path for that, and CCMC will create a plan. And what they need to create that plan for evaluating of this product is technical specifications, engineering diagrams, testing data, etc., as much as possible. So without going deeply into this, we just want to highlight and make you aware of this, that if there is something in your plan or your design that considers a new material, just give us a heads up. Let us know that you're doing this, and then we can help to evaluate whether this certification or evaluation process is required. But just think about that and let us know in advance. So with that, that's the end of our workshop session. We're going to turn it over to everyone to talk or ask questions, sort of the same format as last workshop. And then perhaps if we go to 9:20, we'll have Allison join us around that time, and you can ask her any questions about costing, cost estimating your project or your cost estimates. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. Lisa, do you want to read any questions that came through the chat, or we'll open up the forum for people to talk and clarify anything that they heard from today's presentation?
Sure, okay. First of all, so I'm just going to read the question that we received through the form. The site plans show walls all around. Is this the thickness to be considered for outer wall? And this essential also in the open areas on ground level? I'm not sure if I understand the question. So I think they are asking about if the thickness of the walls needs to be considered as well, and if that's essential also for the open areas and on the ground level.
Sorry, Lisa, could you just read? I didn't hear, you said that the question is, the site plan shows outer walls?
Let me just post it so everyone can read it. So this site plans show walls all around. Is this the thickness to be considered for outer wall? And this essential also in the open areas on ground level. I feel like we're missing some words in this question, but maybe we can figure out what that means.
I guess I'm not sure if the reference is to that plan we distributed. If that's the case, that's not intended to indicate walls. That was indicated as sort of just an idea of a hypothetical footprint of the building. If that's what is motivating the question. And just on that, I'm using the word hypothetical. If your shape is such that you feel it would exceed, for example, one of the dimensions, that's okay. It's not intended to be in effect a cage that you're inside, because you want to be open to shape.
Can you talk carefully?
I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, maybe the person who asked
Tony.
that question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just the person who asked that question, maybe you can just rephrase or let us know if your question has been answered.
Okay, so I think maybe I'm just going to help to clarify, Tony. So in this diagram calculating gross floor area, the gross floor area here, these are wall thicknesses, right? So it means that in the gross floor area calculation, we want you to include the thickness of the outer walls as part of the area, the gross floor area, okay? And in the next diagram, you see here, this dark line is the thickness of the wall. And you'll notice that the livable area excludes the exterior wall thickness in your area calculation. So for instance, if your wall is, I don't know, 10 centimeters in width, do not include that dimension in the livable area. You'll also note that whereas in this diagram, the gross floor area includes private suites, like this is one unit, this is another unit. And as well, the gross floor area includes public space like the electrical room here, mechanical room, and these represent hallways. So in the gross floor area calculation, do include public areas like that. But in the livable area, we just want you to calculate the area where people can live. So it excludes public areas like hallways, elevators. And whereas, just as a point of clarification, because some of you may have designs that have this, so balconies, decks, and patios are not included in the gross floor area. So if you have open space or green space, all of that is not included. So hopefully that answers Zoe's question. So if you have more questions, send us this in the chat or send us an email. Okay, so no more questions. So anyway, yeah, she can answer.
No, no, Zoe is actually me. Sorry, I just changed it back. I had some connection problems, so I was kicked out in between out of the meeting. And the account name that I'm connecting with is the Agorize one, which is called Zoe Agorize. But it was just me taking the question from the form, you know, that we sent before.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a name of the person who asked that. Like, it's just a question. I don't know if that person is in the meeting or not.
Okay, got it. Okay, so next question I see, does CCMC charge for their approval services? I don't know the answer to this question. I think it depends. I think it'll cost something. So what we can say is that if there are any structural or sort of engineering evaluation required, we, the sponsor, will take care of that for you. This would be addressed in stage 3 of the competition, the semifinals. So if there are any engineering reports, etc., we would help you to prepare those at our cost. We don't know what CCMC will charge or what the cost is in their process, but if you do need to consider this, please give us heads up so that we can plan for it, because the approvals and evaluation processes can be long, it can be short, but it could also be long, and that needs to be considered in the planning and schedule. Lisa, are there any other questions?
So I don't have any other questions in the form. And unfortunately, I only see the chat from 10 to 3 because my connection was interrupted. So I don't know if there was any questions before that in the chat. If yes,
okay, I think I could just see one.
I saw a question during the meeting. I think somebody asked if CMHC is going to be part of the judging team. And the answer is no, they're not going to be part of that.
Okay.
Lisa, I just saw a question flash on the screen about whether or not to include, if a piece of equipment is being imported, if the costs of importing that piece of equipment are to be included in the budget. And the answer is yes. There's duties and sometimes brokerage fees, not sometimes, there's a brokerage fee, and those items should be included or need to be included in the budget.
Perfect. And then to everyone else, if you do have any further questions that we didn't answer yet, please just ask them again now. Just write a message in the chat. Also, if you had any questions for Jonathan or Stefan.
I would like to ask a question or expand on Frank's answer to my question about the equipment. So take, for example, $1 million piece of equipment that must come from outside the country. If how do I apportion the cost of that piece of equipment, which I don't own, and the transportation of that piece of equipment against something like the small building? If I have to put that into my per square foot calculation, suddenly it's the most expensive triplex in the whole country. How do we manage that?
I don't know. I have a question. In your scenario, what do you see happening to the piece of equipment after construction is completed? Does it go back to where it came from, or do you keep it, or what's your
In an ideal world, I would buy it, but the world is not always ideal.
I guess, you know, we think this is a piece of equipment that is only there for the construction, right? I mean, it doesn't stay in the building permanently.
Correct. It's a piece of construction equipment.
So I think one scenario we think about is the way, you know, we think about a crane you might use during construction, where we rent the crane and then that rental charge goes towards the cost of the building. So in this case, I think you should tell us, here's the total cost, but what's your, here's your calculation of what you think a rental cost would be that you're going to include in your construction cost.
Perfect. Thank you.
And you know, and tell us, when you're telling us the rental cost, is that an actual cost some supplier is willing to rent it, or is that just a calculation, but you haven't found somebody willing to rent it? Just so we understand what's going on. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Frank, does that make sense?
Sorry, for those who can't see me nod, the answer is yes.
Okay, so I think everybody is happy with where they're at right now. There are a lot of questions left because we've been answering them throughout the one-on-one workshops. And so are there any other things that we you guys want us to talk about, or? Okay. So Lisa's just put up a poll, hoping to get some feedback from you. I think there are about 7 questions in the poll. So please take a moment to just help us answer those questions. And
of course, you can feel free also if you have any other comments. These ones are just multiple choice questions. If you want to leave some more elaborate comments, and also maybe some things that you would wish us to talk about, some topics where you maybe are still insecure or where you have some questions, then just let us know about that, please. I see some questions dropping in, I think. So I see, for example, can utilities such as heating be shared in the small building? Objective states totally self-contained?
Frank, I think the question is like, there's a couple of utilities, there's heating and electricity, right? So what's your sense on this? And
What's the question?
mute, please unmute, Frank.
Sorry.
The question is,
Jan.
can utilities such as heating be shared in the small building? Objective,
I'll take.
totally self-contained.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. Yeah, we would like the unit within the one of the three units within the small building to be self-contained. When I say one of the three, all units are to be self-contained. Let's avoid common services, and the reason for that is, we really want people to be responsible for use of resources. So we want to meter what they consume, and that includes, heating, cooling, lighting, all those things, power. Yeah, please design them to be self-contained units.
Great, and I think there's another question. I suggest to provide some buildings of example and the possible made by the same company to meet the usual conditions in the area. Okay, I guess it's not a question, it's more like a suggestion of something that we could provide.
Rodrigo, what do you mean by, are you talking about the shared heating or utilities? Are you suggesting we provide some examples of shared or non-shared heating?
No, in general, maybe some plans or what kind of finishing have the building usually in the area. And I don't know if it's built by the same company, Horizon, to have a reference, like examples, alternative examples or usual, because we don't know some details about the bedrooms, furnitures or finishing in general.
Okay.
If I may rephrase, I think I understand the question clearly. For those who do not live in large Canadian cities, what does a sample apartment block look like? What does a typical apartment block look like, and how big are the various spaces to Canadian preferences and cultural norms?
Yeah, that's
Okay, understand. Okay, we're going to take this back and give you some examples, and we'll give some references of what Canadians currently live in or what's considered normal. Keep in mind that we are trying to balance two things. One is to maintain the expectations of Canadians, but at the same time, we're also open to different ways of living in different countries. So that part of it, we're also open to considering as well, because maybe we're doing something in Canada that can be done better. And that's part of why we're going onto this competition in this format, is to look internationally for different ideas. So yes, we can provide some examples. Also at the same time, we're open to your suggestions on how we can do things better. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so Lisa, are we done? Did everybody respond to the poll, or almost done with the poll?
I think so. We have quite a lot of responses, so I think we're good. Okay, so we're actually just finishing now at 9:06, and what I'm going to do is, so I'll just maybe read out some of the poll results. So first question, are you confident your team will meet the submission deadline? 41% said somewhat confident.
41% said very confident, 52% said somewhat confident, 7% said not confident at all. Are you confident about your team's ability to meet the challenge objectives? 66% felt that they're confident, 31% felt that they're somewhat confident. Do you find the workshops and check-ins helpful? 76% said very useful, 24% said somewhat useful. Fourth question, do you want a third check-in at the end of May? So the majority, 83% said yes, they do want a check-in at the end of May. So just to remind everyone that please go and schedule the second check-in in April, and that link will be provided and sent by Lisa if not already. Select the statement that best describes your feelings. All of our questions have been answered. 48% strongly agree and 45% somewhat agree. So for those of you that still have questions, maybe you want to talk to them about us. You want to talk to us about that privately. So send us an email or let's plan to talk about that in the next check-in. Number 6, select the statement that describes your feelings. I have learned and grown personally by participating in the Marco Polo Challenge. 38% agree and 48% somewhat agree. And the final question, I feel supported by the organizing team. 79% strongly agree and 14% somewhat agree. Okay, so thank you very much. It's great for us to get that feedback, and I think the message that we're trying to deliver or send to you today is we're here to help make your designs and dreams possibility. So just talk to us. It's a two-way conversation, and we'll do what we can to help you during this stage. And what I'll do is for Allison, maybe in the next workshop, we're going to ask Allison to cover the topic of costing. And again, just to provide a very high level guidance on that, we don't want to give you all the answers or all the solutions because we are interested in outside ideas of how to do this. But in the next workshop, I'll ask Allison to give a talk on costing and how to approach that. And if you wanted to get her help is available. So if, just write us an email and she can give you the same sources of information as a starting point.
Great, perfect. So I think we're already through with all the topics that we wanted to cover today. As you know, you can still contact us anytime via the platform. You'll have the individual check-ins as well to discuss any specific topics. And with that, I'll wish you all a good day. Well, for those of you who are in Canada, a good beginning of the day. For those of who are wherever else in the world, good evening, good day, or good afternoon. And we'll see you again for our third workshop in a few weeks.
Great.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.